Hello everyone. I would like to start by introducing myself first. So my name is Eiad Habib, and I am the head of Alfaisal MedHub. So Alfaisal MedHub is an initiative that aims in creating online global opportunities for medical students. We cover a broad range of topics in Alfaisal MedHub. These topics are primarily to help students understand their career opportunities and understand what opportunities are available to them once they graduate, and the know-hows of the processes that surround these opportunities. So since a big issue that we notice is that a lot of medical students are always confused about what's ahead of them. So we at Alfaisal MedHub, we created the Career Guidance Series. This series tackles this very issue through the lens of experienced and accomplished seniors at Alfaisal University. So as I said, the Career Guidance Series, it's a series that helps medical students, and we are very grateful for AMBOSS for their partnership in this series. We have Mr. Mahmoud Lakhmoush, who is the Senior Partnerships Manager of the Middle East and the North African region. Mr. Mahmoud, do you want to say a few words?
Yeah, sure. So, Assalamu alaikum. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Mahmoud Lakhmoush, the Regional Manager of AMBOSS in the Middle East and North Africa. Yeah, thanks. AMBOSS is, as you know, it's a learning and knowledge platform for medical students and educators alike.
I can't hear you. There's a problem with the audio.
Sorry, can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, now we can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I don't know if there's any problem from my side, but I hope that you can hear me now.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Perfect. So again, hello everyone and Assalamu alaikum. My name is Mahmoud Lakhmoush, the Regional Manager of AMBOSS in the Middle East and North Africa. And as you know, AMBOSS is a learning and knowledge platform for medical students and educators alike, created by a team of dedicated physicians. And we at AMBOSS honored to be partnering with Alfaisal University College of Medicine, Riyadh, to organize the Career Guidance Series US Residency Talks by Alfaisal MedHub. It's really been great working together so far with Alfaisal University, and I'm privileged to be part of this strategic partnership with them. AMBOSS is particularly passionate about career education, as it's important to help medical students understand the difference between available once they graduated from medical school. And as you move to your residency, you move to the clinical side now, and you will need to apply all your knowledge and skills to the real world. And this is our mission at AMBOSS. We partner with educators, doctors around the world to empower all doctors and make them the doctors of the future. I do not take too much time of this talks, and I will leave the stage for you, Ala, and Dr. Eiad to say and complete. Thank you for having me again.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mahmoud, and we're very grateful for your constant support, and we're very happy to have you here today. And with that being said, we have Dr. Eiad Habib with us today. He is going to be giving the talk on preparing your residency program list. So just to introduce Dr. Eiad, he is a PGY1 internal medicine resident at Mayo Clinic, Arizona. Dr. Eiad, thank you so much for being here today, and you can start whenever you're ready.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Can you guys hear me fine?
Yeah, your voice is clear.
All right. First of all, I just want to thank Alfaisal MedHub, Ala, and everyone else in the team. Of course, also Dr. Ismail Shakir, the big boss, as well as Ambas. Thank you very much for allowing me to be here today. And hopefully we'll have a beneficial talk for everyone, inshallah. I just wanted to preface this talk by saying that this is tailored towards IMGs. It's actually very specific to IMGs. So if there were any American students, I really apologize. We didn't know in advance that we would be getting some American students. So with that being said, I'll just start since I'm an IMG myself. So I'll just dive right into it. We'll talk about preparing the program list. What are the requirements? What are the things that we need to look for? How do we come up with a list? I'll do some slides, and then after that we can do like a quick demo. I'll just open ERAS and show you how I used to do the primary filtration for the programs before I applied, and then how I used to do like more specific filtration after I received some interviews. So with that being said, let's just get started. So the first question is, when should you start? For everyone applying this year, the short answer is you need to start now. Usually you start about a month before the applications are released. This just gives you time to sort through all the programs one by one. And my recommendation is to actually do that, to sit and sort through the programs one by one. If someone is applying to a specialty that doesn't have like a lot of programs, things like, neurology, even general surgery, pediatrics, sometimes that's fine. Sometimes they can start a bit later. But for things that are very heavy, mainly IM and family medicine, because there are tons and tons of programs, so giving yourself about a month before the applications are released should be more than enough to go through the programs and kind of come up with the final list that you need to do. Okay, so in terms of how to start, there are two ways to approach this. Sometimes people say you can make an Excel sheet where you like kind of copy down the program names, and you mention like the IMG percentage and the board pass rates and the fellowship matches and the research and the program director's name and all these things. And honestly, to me, I think that this is useless. I think it's a waste of time to start with, just because, especially for the really wide specialties like internal medicine, just because you're going to have so many programs and it's going to be so much more time consuming than it should be, when in reality you can just on ERAS directly, you can filter through the programs and save the ones that you want and then kind of end up applying to that list anyway. However, just to show you guys what I'm talking about, so this is this is what it looks like. I came up with it. This was one of the lists that was shared last year before I applied. And it already has like all the programs. Someone was kind enough to do this. They copied all the programs from ERAS. So they put them by the state, and then they mentioned like any specific comments, IMG percentage, board pass rate, residence, step 1, step 2, step 3 required or not, and other things. And then you just fill through them and you add whatever you want. So this is one option. You can definitely do something like this. By the way, any files that I'm going to be using, I put them in a Google Drive, and I'll put the link in the chat so that you guys can use them later on. So some people might want to use something like this, but in my humble opinion, I don't think that this is needed. I think it wastes a lot more time than you need to. The other thing is through ERAS directly, and let me just go back to the slides. Through ERAS directly, I'll go through it. I'll show you guys a demo how we used to do it without making any list. I'll just finish these slides and then show you. And that's the way I recommend. But let's talk a bit about the factors that you should consider when you're searching for programs. So the number one thing is obviously visa status. This makes it very easy for you to filter out programs. So things like internal medicine, for example, because I applied to internal medicine, so most of my experience is tailored around that. Internal medicine has around 550 programs, plus minus 20, 30. And then I needed a visa. So the second that you just remove the programs that don't sponsor, that don't sponsor visas, the 550 becomes around 350. So it kind of just narrows it down instantaneously. So this is the first filter, and this is something that you should really just start with, because you don't want to waste your money applying to programs that are not going to sponsor your visa status. That's if you needed a visa. The second thing is location. Location for us, for IMG specifically, it's kind of not that important in the US, just because usually, you know, that like the American students, they have family somewhere, or they want to stay around the place where they did their medical school. For us, we're coming from abroad, and usually the location does not matter that much for us unless there is something specific. So for me, for example, I knew that I did not want to do residency in New York. So I avoided applying to any program in New York. And this is like around 80 or 90 programs. And it's just because I thought to myself that I would rather not match than match in New York, okay? Someone else might have a different kind of preference, but this is also one of the other easy filters to come out. So if I remove the visa and I remove the locations that I'm not gonna apply to, I'm gonna bring down the number that I have to filter through. Now, the third and really important thing is fellowship placement. I think this is the major thing that you need to focus on when you're doing the primary filtration before you start applying to the residency programs. And what do I mean by fellowship placement? So fellowship placement is basically, I'm going to train in the program. It's a residency program, so I'm going to train for 3 to 7 years, however long that is. And then after that, most people right now, they subspecialize into a fellowship. And the fellowship match is just as hectic as the residency match. So people apply from all over the country for very few seats, and then they pick the most prestigious or the strongest programs, and this is where they pick the residents from. So it becomes less and less about the medical school stuff, where it's like USMLE scores and where you did your medical school. It becomes about where you did your residency. And that's why it's really important to see what kind of programs the graduates of this residency program end up matching out in terms of fellowship. And if I had to pick just the single most important thing before you filter your programs, it is the fellowship placement. There are two ways about this. There's something called in-house. In-house is basically, I did internal medicine in my program, and then my program actually has a cardiology fellowship, for example, and I want to apply to cardiology. So I check the number of fellows that they took every year, and I see if they took some of the fellows from their own residency program, from their own internal medicine residency program or not. Because if they did, that's a really good sign. It means that they trust the education in the residency program and they would like to keep them on. If they don't, that's definitely a red flag. So if the fellowship program in the same hospital that the residency program is in doesn't take residents from their own residency program, that means that they don't trust the quality of education and training that they receive in the residency program. And to me, that's a red flag. I would need to explore this further. And if I don't find any reasonable answer, I would just avoid applying to this program. The other thing is, because sometimes we have these small community programs, like they have 6 to 10 residents a year, and you're not really sure because they don't really have an in-house cardiology fellowship, for example. So you just look at the places that they went to. Did they go to any prestigious programs? Did they go to places that are solid and that take people from other strong programs? Because if they don't, then to me, that means that the residency program is either the quality is low, the quality of the training is low, or the residency program is relatively new and hasn't made a name for itself yet, so you're not really sure what you want to do. And in this case, I would avoid applying to this program. Like I said, I keep repeating that I applied to IM, so my experience is more tailored toward IM. So when you have 350 programs and you're wondering about a program, whether I should apply to it or not because of this fellowship thing, I would much rather just take it off the list and apply to the ones that I actually feel like if I got an interview there, I would rank this program, and if I matched there, I'd be happy. For other things like, neuro or general surgery, if you feel like it's 50-50 and the total number of programs is already like 150 or 160, in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter in terms of money or interviews or so on, so you can just keep it on your list. The other thing is specifically for IM, and I would say this is for IM and maybe a bit of pediatrics, is you want to see if any of the graduates match to a competitive fellowship. Not a fellowship program, but an actual fellowship. So in IM, for example, we know that GI and cardiology are the most competitive fellowships. If I'm looking at residency programs and I'm looking at the graduates where they went, and I see that all the graduates went to endocrinology and nephrology and rheumatology, there is nothing against these specialties. But if no one matched cardiology or GI in the past 2 to 3 years, that gives me major red flags. That tells me either that people are applying, so residents are applying from the program, but they're not matching into competitive specialties, or the program does not really give adequate exposure to these competitive specialties. So to me, the training is not good. So even if your plan is to go into endocrinology or nephrology, like a very non-competitive fellowship, you need to see that they have some graduates from the program that applied and matched into a competitive fellowship. Even if it's in the middle of nowhere, but at least it's cardiology or GI, that's much better than only seeing nephrology and endocrinology. And you're going to see this a lot when you start looking at where the graduates went. You're going to see so many community programs that are full of IMGs, but then you look at where the graduates went and you only find, like I said, all these specialties. And the thing is, because these specialties like nephrology or hematology are very non-competitive, it's very easy to match into one of these fellowships in a really good place. So you'll find someone match nephrology in the University of Michigan. So you look at the name and it's like, wow, University of Michigan, and as an IMG, that means it's a strong program. Well, in reality, nephrology has 500 unfilled spots every year. So it's not really a competitive fellowship. So most people that apply and they match in really good places, just because there isn't a lot of demand on the specialty. But if I saw someone match cardiology or GI in the middle of nowhere, I would think that this is a stronger program than the one that matched only nephrology and rheumatology at the University of Michigan. I'll go into a bit more detail about this when I start the ERAS demo. The other thing is program size. So program size is really important, especially for the bigger specialties. So internal medicine, family medicine, pediatrics, all of these, program size is extremely important. You're going to find programs that take 6 residents a year. And to me, I directly avoided any place that takes less than 10 residents a year. Why is that? Number one, a smaller program size means that most likely the hospital itself is small. So like it has a small number of beds, and the quality of training and the quality of what you're going to be exposed to is not going to be as good as something that is a bit on the bigger side. And number two, if I only have 6 residents, that means that I'm really going to be pressured and stressed throughout the whole year. I'm not going to have time to do rotations and do electives and so on. So this is a really important thing for me. Usually the IM programs, they range between 6, like I said, to all the way to 60 in really big places. So I avoided applying to less than 10. They usually call the programs that take between 12 to 26 residents a year. These are called mid-sized programs, and then anything more than 26, 27, that's usually considered a very big program. And then anything under 12 or under 10, it's considered a really small program, and the majority of them are, like I said, small community hospitals that have like 100 beds total, and their 6 are usually all IMGs, and they just really work them like crazy. So I would recommend avoiding such programs. Another factor is research. Research for the majority of people is not as important, but for people going into competitive fellowships, it's really important. So if I want to do cardiology, if I want to do GI, I need to publish some research during my residency. And if I go to the program and I see that, because usually when we go on program websites, and I'll do this when I start the ERAS demo, the programs usually have like a link for the research that the residents did. So if you go on the program and you see that the research that they're proud of and they're putting on the website is just 2-3 poster presentations in ACP chapter somewhere in the middle of nowhere, this is not research. This is just, they're just putting it there so that they tell you that we have research, but this is useless. I need to see some publications, actual publications by the residents in the program, especially in competitive fields, so that I know that this program and this hospital has a lot of research, that I have research opportunities, so that when I apply to fellowship, I don't struggle. I don't waste another year trying to do research and then apply. So I would say for things like, if you're planning on doing a non-competitive fellowship, research is not very important, so you don't really have to care about this that much. But if you are doing if you're planning to do a competitive fellowship, or if you're still unsure about what you want to do, you might as well be on the safe side of things and apply to things that have research, because having research is never going to hurt you, but not having research is going to likely hurt you in specific situations. Again, this is more tailored towards IM for things like, because I know that some people are applying, for example, for neurology. Research is not important for neurology, whether it's for residency or for fellowship. Research is not important. Pediatrics, I think there's just 1 or 2 competitive fellowships that need research. Most of them don't. General surgery, if you want to go into something really competitive later on, like plastics or thoracic or so on, they need some research. But for the majority of other things, they don't really need a lot of research. So that's when it becomes variable and it becomes about your priorities. Another thing is IMG percentage. in the program. This has been quoted a lot. Everyone talks about this and tells you apply to the programs that have a lot of IMGs because they're more likely to send you interviews and they're more likely to accept you. Well, in reality, that's true, but the unfortunate reality of things is that the programs that are IMG heavy are usually the bad programs, are usually the malignant programs, are usually the programs where people kill themselves, are usually the programs where people don't have research and they're overworked and they don't match into fellowships and it's in the middle of nowhere. Why is that? Because if it was good enough, American students would want to go there. So if I see a program that is 70 or 80% IMGs, and that's the majority of, for example, New York programs or like small community hospitals in other places, I know that this is by nature, unless it's like a very weird exception, it is going to be a malignant program. The residents are going to be overworked, but the thing is, because IMGs, they see them as they're desperate and they're going to settle for anything, so they just go there. So if this is what you are, if this is what your application is, if this is how you, like, your priority is just to match in the US, then yeah, for sure. And you want to save some money, just apply to IMG heavy programs that have more than 20 or 30% IMGs, and you're more likely going to get a very good yield of interviews than if you apply to the other programs that don't have IMGs. But if you feel like your application is strong, if you feel like that, I would rather not match or like match the year after, but get a good program so that I can, be comfortable during my residency and not worry about where I'm going to match for fellowship and so on, then I would recommend applying. Actually, I would recommend avoiding the programs that have a lot of IMGs. And that's what I did. I think I put a filter for myself. If it was anything more than 30% IMGs, I did not apply. And a lot of times, because these percentages are very fluid, like we're going to see some resources later, like Residency Explorer, Frida, even the ERAS and the program websites themselves. A lot of times the programs they tell you they have 0% IMGs, but, and most people tell you to avoid applying to these. And if money is an issue, I would definitely recommend to avoid applying to these. But if money is not an issue and you feel like I'm going to do this just once and it doesn't matter how much I'm going to pay, but I really need to match somewhere good, I would apply even to the programs that have 0% IMG, because if you feel like your application is strong enough, things are very weird every year with COVID and with other things. No one knows. It's a very random process, and sometimes they just send you interviews. And actually, the program that I matched in, Mayo, on Residency Explorer, it says that the percentage of IMGs is 0%. That's not true, because they do have IMGs, but that's just an example. So if I just looked at this and I saw that, it has 0% IMGs, I'm going to avoid applying to it, I wouldn't have matched here. So keep in mind two things. First of all, that the 0% that you see in the majority of websites is most likely not true, unless we're talking about like a very few programs. And then even if it was true, why not try your luck if you have a strong application and you're planning to just apply once? So this, like I said, it's two opposite ends of the spectrum. It's whether you really want to match and it doesn't matter where you want to go, or if I want to match somewhere comfortable and I don't mind waiting another year to match. This is where you pick the IMG percentage. It's definitely a deciding factor. It makes the difference of, do you want to be on the lower side or do you want to be on the greater side and be on the safe side? The last thing is certain application criteria, and these, the way you're going to find them is through the websites of the residency programs themselves. A lot of times you're going to find programs, especially for IM, that tell you we require for IMGs 12 months of clinical experience. So if you only have 3 months of clinical experience, what is the point of applying? You're just wasting your money. And this, for the most part, I've seen it's implemented strictly. If for example, you did 3 months and the requirement is 6 months, maybe if you want to be on the, I'll try my luck, I'll apply to a few of them that require 6 months, that's fine. But then if you just have 3 and it requires 12, or if you have 6 even and it needs 12, I personally think it's a waste of money. Other things, some programs have score cutoffs. So if your scores are low, if your scores are in the like 220s, 230s, and the program has a cutoff of, for example, 220 for IMG, or actually sometimes 210, 230s, and your scores are 220s, I would apply, because a lot of times these cutoffs are not very strict, especially when we're talking about like 5 or 10 or 15 points. So like I said, if you have average scores and you feel like the program requirement, or even if you're like in the 230s, then the program requirement is, for example, 240, which is very few programs that need that, I would still consider applying, because many people apply to these places and they do get interviews, even though the score is below, the score cutoff is higher than the score that they received. On the other end of things, and this is literally a few programs, like 2 or 3 programs, They require, for example, the 90th percentile score on step 1 and step 2 for IMGs and 12 months of US clinical experience. Now, am I going to apply to that? If you have the 12 months clinical experience with the scores, for sure, go ahead. But if you just have the scores and you don't really have the clinical experience, I wouldn't recommend applying. And like I said, this is actually just probably a couple of programs. I remember Beth Israel, which is one of the Harvard affiliated hospitals, it has this requirement, 90th percentile on both steps and 12 months of US clinical experience. And I had 6 months of electives. So like I said, every program that needed more than 6, I honestly just avoided applying to it. And this is what I heard from the seniors too, that usually for the clinical experience stuff, if it's something that is really significant, the difference between how many you did and how many they require, it's more or less going to be a waste of money because no one's going to send you an interview, because for them, they're usually very competitive programs that have a lot of American applicants. So the only reason they would consider an exception of an IMG is when they put these insane cutoffs. And then if someone actually meets them, that's when they sit with them and decide, okay, yeah, maybe we might send them an interview or something like that. So these are usually the factors that you want to consider. I want to say something, and because you're going to filter through the programs again after you apply and after you receive your interviews, just before you're making your rank order list, you're going to decide which programs go on the top of my list, which programs go lower, and which programs am I not going to even put on the rank order list. And by then, that's when I would recommend doing an Excel sheet and putting all the details and sitting with yourself and deciding what do I want to do and what are my priorities and where should I rank all these things. And even you look at the fellowships in significant detail and the IMG percentage and so on. Now, when you're just filtering programs out of the, just the initial screening tool, if money is not an issue, I would err on the side of, being a bit more liberal with your choices, because worst case scenario, yeah, they're going to send you an interview, but then I'm going to sit and decide and actually scrutinize exactly what the pros and cons that they have when I'm doing my rank order list. So this is something that I think that you guys should do. I don't think that you should be very stringent on the criteria when you're applying the first time. Just be a bit on the liberal side. And then you can specifically decide after they send you the interviews. That's all, of course, considering that money is not an issue. So these are the main resources that we're going to use to come up with our list of programs. The number one source is actually the program website. This is better than ERAS and Residency Explorer and Frida and everything else. The program website is going to give you all the information that we talked about. If it's a good website, it's going to give you it's going to give you what they need about the visa status. They're going to tell you for IMGs, do we sponsor visas or we don't. It's going to tell you where the graduates go, so you're going to see the fellowship placement. Program size, sometimes it's written, sometimes not. Whether they have research. So all these things, the easiest place to go is the program website, and to very quickly screen these things, see if they have all the things that we're looking for. If they do, then I'm going to save the program on ERAS and continue applying to it. If they don't, then I need to look at other resources. The other resources are going to be ERAS itself. Once we click on the program, sometimes it gives you some details. So I'll go through that when we start. There's also Residency Explorer and Frida. I also have these open, so we're going to go through them through the demo. There's also Reddit. I don't know, like whoever knows me knows that I'm a very big fan of Reddit. And every year they do spreadsheets for every single specialty that they apply to. And usually these spreadsheets are not IMG heavy. They're usually American people, but it gives you a really good idea of what the programs are like and what the people's experiences have been now and in the past and the fellowships and so on. And a lot of times it kind of makes you form an outline of the tier of the programs that you're applying to and the tier of interviews that you're receiving. Is this a low tier program, mid tier? Is this a really prestigious program? The only way for us to really find out is through these discussions and through the fellowship matches and so on. If I go on Doximity and check the rankings of the residency, this is very flawed because the way that they rank is extremely weird. They just ask residents to rank the top 5 places and it's just weird. So usually if you just Google top residency programs, these rankings are not really accurate. The really accurate things are actually what program directors think, especially for fellowship program directors and so on. So that's why reading a lot through the Reddit spreadsheets and looking at all the fellowship matches of every single program that I'm looking into and stuff, this is what's going to make you create a really good outline of the tier of programs that I'm dealing with. So I really recommend going through the Reddit spreadsheet, whether now or even, I don't think that they started them now for this year, maybe for just a few specialties like ortho and other things, but I think for IM, they still haven't implemented it. But I used to check the spreadsheet every single day after after the applications were released, and I just kept reading about the programs and what are the kinds of things that they ask in the interviews. Especially like if you have an interview at some program, other people would have interviewed at that program before you, and they would tell you what the interview is like and what the questions they ask are, and what are the things they focus on. And sometimes they give you the fellowship match of like the most recent year, because for example, for IM, the fellowship results are gonna come out in December. So when it comes out in December or January, most programs are not going to update their websites before the deadline of the rank order list. But if I go on Reddit, usually they post them directly, the fresh fellowship results, so that you can see for this year, the residents that applied this year, where did they go? So Reddit spreadsheets are extremely helpful, and I would recommend having a look at them. And then the last thing is advice from seniors, people that applied. I'm sorry, is someone saying something? Okay. The last thing is senior advice, people that applied before you, especially in the specialty that you want to apply to. You can definitely ask them about the program, especially people like for us, for example, from Alfaisal, people that matched in different places. If there's a program that you're unsure of, reach out and tell them, do you recommend I apply to this program or not? But the majority of programs that our graduates match into are really good programs. So I would just honestly just recommend just applying. The vast majority of them. But then if you're unsure about a specific program, just reach out. Our seniors are usually very nice and very helpful, and they can give you a good, unbiased opinion of whether you should apply to the program or not. I get this question asked so many times. How many programs should you apply to? And the real answer is there is no right answer. This really depends on your priorities. It depends on your credentials as an applicant. It depends on what you're looking for in a program. It depends on the specialty that you're applying to. So all of these are really important things, and no one can tell you how many programs that you're supposed to apply to. I can give you my example. I applied to 226 programs. Like I said, I have research, I have scores, I have 6 months of electives, and I felt like my application was strong enough. And me being on the kind of mid-stringent side, this is what I chose to apply to. So 226. A lot of my friends applied to the 350 as is. They didn't even look at them, and they decided that, you know what, if money is not an issue, I'm just going to apply to everything and see the tier of interviews that I receive. And then after I do the interviews, I'll sit and really look at what I want to rank and what I don't want to. So this is an option that you can do. But to me, I honestly wanted to do, because I felt like I have a lot of time. I wanted to do the hard work now throughout this month to look at every single program out of the 350 and look at all the things that we talked about, and then filter out the ones that I'm not really interested in. For specialties like neuro, like pediatrics, like surgery, and the very competitive specialties like ortho and ophtha and all these things, honestly, just apply to all the programs. We're IMGs, we're not at a luxury of picking what we want to match into and so on. And it's not worth the hassle. If there's only 120 programs and I do all these efforts and hard work and stuff to take out 10 or 20 programs, it's not really worth it. So you can just apply and save yourself some time. But for IM and family medicine and these things, that's when you really need to sit and do this. I didn't mention, I think, so I applied to 226 and I received 9 interviews. So this is my yield of interviews. I'll show you guys now. I have some, whoever knows me knows I love statistics. So this is from the NRMP match booklet from 2020. And this is the number of contiguous ranks. Contiguous ranks basically means not the number of interviews you received, it's the number of programs that you ranked before the NRMP rank order list deadline. So you could have received 15, but only ranked 6, and this is where you are. And this just shows you that for non-US IMGs, that it usually starts becoming, much more likely to get matched than not at around 5 ranked programs. And then after that, it really doesn't matter. Most likely you'll match somewhere. I wanted to say one thing for non-US IMGs, because this is brought up a lot, and there's a very common misconception. People think that people with a green card are US IMGs. People with a green card for residency programs are considered US IMGs. So when a program director is looking at someone with a green card versus someone with an American passport, to them, it's the exact same thing, and you will both get the same kind of interviews if you both apply as IMGs. However, for statistical purposes, for the NRMP match booklet, for Residency Explorer, when they tell you the percentage of non-US IMGs, this includes green card holders. So keep this in mind. What does this mean? This means that these numbers are usually inflated if you're someone that doesn't have a green card. So this is really important, and you're going to know this when you start registering for the NRMP match, which usually opens around mid-September. They're going to ask you for certain statistics so that they combine these things for you. So they're going to ask you about your scores, your research and stuff, and then your visa status, and then they're going to tell you. So someone that is a permanent resident or is a green card holder, they fall under the non-US IMGs. The US IMGs are only the ones with passports. But like I said, so this is for, if you're someone that has a green card, don't worry about applying to the residency programs because you're going to be treated the same way as someone who has an American passport. But for non-US IMGs who actually don't have a green card, keep in mind that any numbers you're looking at here are inflated because they include green card holders, okay? And then this is just the same thing in graph format. So it tells you that basically you start becoming around the 0.7 probability of matching somewhere around 5 ranks, not 5 interviews, 5 programs that you ranked on the match booklet. And then I want to show you guys something. So let me share the screen. So this is, they released this on October 21st last year. This was ERAS. Just to give you an idea of how many programs people apply to. So this is just all these, it's a bunch of numbers, but what's important for us is the average residency applications. And then you can see for things like internal medicine, and this is across the years, this is the average number of people, of programs people apply to. And you can see that for 2021, it was COVID and people were thinking, you know what, most people are not doing electives and so on. I might be lucky this year and stuff. So you can see there is an obvious jump in the average number of programs that people apply to for internal medicine, for example. But you can also see that the average is really low. The average is only 103. And if you're gonna be the IMG who follows what I said at the beginning of like only applying to programs that are IMG heavy, like the programs that are 50 or 60 or 70% IMGs, this is the number that you're gonna end up applying to. So if this is your priority and you wanna save some money, you definitely can just apply to this number. But like I said, if you wanna have some safety programs, so some IMG heavy programs, some mid-tier programs, and then some really prestigious programs, you're going to go somewhere around the 200 range, if not even more. And then also, I'm gonna this spreadsheet is going to be in the Google Drive link, so you guys can look at it for all the other specialties. It's really nice just to track the progress, and then it just shows you the average number of residency applicants and like everything else. So to me, this was very interesting, but yeah. So let's go back to the slides. Where did it go? Okay. All right. Another thing that you can look at, and this is not as important when you're doing your primary screening, it's more important when you're doing your secondary screening, like after you're trying to rank the programs, is the accreditation status of the programs. This is important only if a program is, I would say, IMG heavy, or you've heard malignant comments about the program, because this is basically from ACGME. Can you guys see the website, or do I need to stop sharing? Do you see a website, or are you still seeing the slides?
Just the slides.
We can only see the slides.
Sure.
Yeah, we can only see the slides.
Okay. So it's this one. Yep. All right. Can you guys see this? So this link, it's in the slides. This is the ACGME page that accredits all the residency programs that we're going to apply to. So you can search every single program and it tells you how long the program was established, how long it's been accredited for, and if there were any red flags or issues with the program. So this is sometimes important when you're trying to see if you should apply to the program or not. Because if the program has red flags, if it wasn't accredited, for example, you're not going to be able to match into fellowship, This is like literally, I would say less than 1% of programs, but if you're unsure, you can check this website before you apply. So for example, I put internal medicine, I put Arizona, and then it's going to show me all the programs that are in Arizona that are internal medicine. So for example, let me pick, for example, University of Arizona to SOM program. So I'm going to go to you can press on view program. It tells you what kind of fellowships they offer, which is really nice. It makes it easy for you. It tells you who the program director is and like the program coordinator and so on. It tells you for every year how long you're going to spend in every hospital, which is nice. I mean, this is not really important in terms of like picking the primary selection, but definitely after you interview and you're trying to rank your programs, you should definitely have a look at this. And then the important thing here is, so it tells you when the program director was first appointed. A lot of times if the program director is like just new this year, well, there are certain flags that are raised in my mind. I need to check, did something happen? Did the past program director get fired? Did something go on? Is there like something that went with the program? Like, for example, I'm sure you've heard of the Lincoln Memorial Hospital where 3 people killed themselves. So what is going on? I need to see. But if there's someone old and they've been the same, usually this tells you that the program director is really experienced and they know what they're doing and there haven't been any issues. And the other thing is, I can just press view accreditation history and it tells me that they've been accredited since 2000 and they've only been fully accredited since then. So there were no issues basically. So again, you're not going to do this for every single program you apply to, but if you're unsure, this is a nice tool that you can use. And for me, it was very helpful. Now the cost. You can definitely like do this multiple ways. There was a very nice, this is through Reddit, there was a very nice residency fee spreadsheet calculator. It's right here. This is also going to be in the Google Drive link. So this just tells you that even if you're like applying to multiple specialties, so like I'm applying for 50 IM and then 50 family medicine, how much is it all going to be? For example, for me, I told you I applied to 226 programs. And the total was $5,555. And then they pay like $80 for like a USMLE transcript. So this is how much it comes out to. If I'm going to apply to, for example, the 350 that I told you that some people applied to, they just didn't want to filter through their programs. The 350 comes out to $8,000, almost $9,000. On the other hand, if I'm going to just apply to 100, it's going to be around $2,500. So usually the range for like, I would say for a realistic range would be between $3,000 to $6,000 probably. So it's a lot of money for sure. And that's why I would recommend, like, if you feel like your application is like you already did everything that you need to, I'm not waiting on research to come out. I'm not waiting on like scores. I'm not waiting on anything. Everything is ready. I would recommend just going all out. Trying to not think of money as much, because if you apply to a few programs and you get few interviews and you don't end up matching and you apply a second year, it's going to be much more expensive for you. Aside from the fact that it's going to probably, you know, mess up your career a bit just because I need to find something else to do and so on. As like someone who didn't match the first time. So that's why I would recommend being on the side of like I said, being a bit more lenient with the costs and with everything else, but you guys can do whatever you want. Again, this spreadsheet is going to be in the Google Drive link. I'll put the Google Drive link as soon as I'm done with the slides. If I forget, please remind me. I think we're almost done. Yeah, so this is one of the last slides. I hear this a lot and I see this on like the IMG Reddit subreddit. There are things like, you know, match a resident and other weird things that I've never heard of, where like you pay $250 or like $1,000 or I don't know, some weird, stupid number. And then they tell you, we're going to give you a list of programs that are specific to you based on your application. And if you apply to these programs, we guarantee that you will match. This is all BS. This is absolute trash. Steer away from these programs, from these websites. They're just trying to take your money to do the same exact thing that we just talked about doing. You have the time, you have the brains, you have everything else. These are people that are just admins that just want to take money. We are doctors. We did the hard work. This is actually, in the grand scheme of things, very minor. I'm just going to sit through the ERAS programs, filter what I need to do, and make my own list for myself based on the programs that actually fit me. No one can ever do that for you. And even if you think I want to reach out to one of the seniors and see the programs that they applied to, sure. And I'm happy to share with you the programs that I applied to. But my priorities are very different from anyone else's priorities. You know, my split decision making, when I look at the program and I go like, yeah, this program has 12 people, but the fellowship is not great. So you know what? I want cardiology, so I'm just going to cancel it. This issue, no one can do this except you, because you know what you're aiming for. So I wouldn't recommend using anyone else's list. Maybe you can use the list when you're done to like make sure that I didn't miss any good programs. If you know someone applied to really good programs only. But then your actual stuff, you need to do this. You need to do this on your own and steer away from anything that is like, you know, business related, because they're just going to take your money and do nothing with it. It's completely useless. I like when I see this on IMG Reddit, because there are so many people that are, you know, innocent and they just don't know what's going on. And they go like, you know, they see this website that tells you, I'm going to make you match. I'm going to make your own list. They just pay the money and it's really not worth it. So I just wanted to make sure that this point is clear. Okay, now let's do the demo. Just a second, I'm trying to log in. Okay. So before I forget, this is the link. This is the Google Drive link that has all the 3 documents. All the 3 documents. I'm sorry, we can look through these questions. I just didn't look at any of the questions. Maybe we can look at them when we're done. This link has everything that I talked about, all the spreadsheets and so on. Just a second, I'm trying to get ERAS to open. Okay. Can you guys see the screen?
Yeah, we can see the screen, but it's a bit cropped.
Yeah, that's fine. All right, so I went on ERAS, and we're just going to go through the program. So if you just press on programs and you want to search programs, so we're going to do, for example, internal medicine, because like I said, that's at least the majority of my experience is there. And usually they have around 570 programs now, like we said. Okay, and this is what the program list is going to look like. Of course, it's a very big list because we picked a pretty big specialty. So we're just gonna like pick a random program. Okay, I'll just pick anything random here. I want it to be something that is not. Yeah, so let's do this. So Baylor, for example. So in the program itself, like I said, we can just press on the program, and sometimes it gives you some information about what the program is like. So it tells you here, for example, is one of the most comprehensive and diverse, blah, blah, blah. So this is all useless for me. It doesn't mention anything. Sometimes they tell you that, yeah, our score cutoff for IMGs is blah, and we need this kind of research experience, and we need all this stuff. So here it doesn't really, it's not really showing, but this is definitely the first place that I would look at. The second place that I would look into is actually the website itself. So if you just press on the program, you're always going to find the link for the website. I'm going to press on the website, and then it's going to take me to the website here. And this is how usually the websites look like if it's a good place. If it's, like we said, if it's going to be like a decent university place, usually these ones don't have a lot of IMGs. It's going to look like this. It's going to tell me a lot of stuff. I don't really need to look into all the details about the program. I just need to look at a few specific things. So the first thing that I would look at is, like we said, fellowships. Where do they go? Of course, this is Baylor, so most likely they're going to be matching in really good places. But I'm just showing you guys, usually it's either in fellowship or like where our graduates have went or alumni, something like that. This is the first thing that I usually look at. And it just tells me where do they go. So here, like you can see, it says 60% they pursue fellowships, 90% match into the top 3 choices. This is a useless number that everyone uses in statistics, but it's useless because the majority of people everywhere match into their into one of their top 3 choices. And then this shows you where they matched. And then this shows you by, especially like for competitive fellowships, for example, here cardiology in the past 3 years, they matched 44 people, and these are the schools that they went to. So I see something like this, I don't think twice. Yes, I'm gonna apply. The only thing that would make me a bit more hesitant is, just a second, trying to get Residency Explorer to open. Okay. All right. Okay. Can you guys see the screen?
Yeah, it's clear.
Yeah, so this is Residency Explorer. To me, this is a very, very useful website. This was my #2 go-to after the website of the residency program itself. The nice thing about this, even though it's not like very helpful, is just you can put some of your details about like your application. So let's say we're just going to do for demonstration purposes, 3, 3, 3, 3. And then we're going to do non-US IMG. And then let's say, you can also put your score so that you compare to other people in the program. So let's say, for example, 240 and 250. Okay, save and continue. Just because it gives you an idea of what your application looks like relative to the people that they take. Again, these are all statistics, and these don't really, they shouldn't be the make it or break it for you, but they just give you a better idea. So I picked that I want to do internal medicine, categorical track. They're just going to do the results. The nice thing about this this program, it's also through the AAMC. So the same people that make the ERAS website and portal and so on, they have the same thing. I'm going to find all my programs here, and then I can filter them based on what I'm looking for. So for example, here, this tells you that, for example, if my score is 240, my step 1 score is in the middle 50% of applicants that match there. My step 2 is in the upper 25 and so on. And then it tells me how much of the IMGs are matched there. So if what you want to do is basically just to filter based on IMG percentage, it's very easy to do it from here, much easier and much more efficient than if you do it through ERAS. The nice thing is, for example, we were checking Baylor, so I can directly search Baylor. Baylor College of Medicine. So it's going to show me, so see, like we said, because it's a good place, percentage of non-US IMGs is 1%. I actually know someone that matched there. So if I'm going to go with the 1% thing, I'll go like, yeah, that's impossible. That's 1 in 100. I'm not going to apply. But in the very small group of people that we know, there's already one. So what does this tell you? This tells you that if you feel like your application is strong enough, just apply. Seeing 1% shouldn't discourage you from applying. Here, the nice thing is it tells you how many people they take. So for example, here for PGY1, they take 73 people. Of course, the 73 includes the categorical people and then the preliminary IM people. So preliminary is just people that want to do ophthalmology or anesthesiology or like any specialty that requires a prelim year. So usually they count them with the PGY1s, but then when you see the PGY2 and PGY3, so this is how you know that they take 53 categorical people every year. So this for me is a really, really big program. They said for 2021 here, they're offering 55 positions and they filled all 55. Sometimes you're going to see, especially for programs that are IMG heavy, sometimes they're going to soak. So you're going to see that, you know, they had 10 positions, they only filled 7 or 8. This tells you that the program is not really that good because people don't want to go there. Here it shows you like some comparisons where you are compared to where the residents have matched. but all of this is not that important. Important thing here is visa. Like we said, visa can either be through the program website itself or through ERAS if it's mentioned, or to me, honestly, the first place that I used to look at is actually through Residency Explorer. It tells you here if they offer H1B or J1. If it's a no, I'll just cancel it out. That's very easy for me because I don't even need to look at anything else. So actually, yeah, I forgot to mention this. Usually I look at the visa before the fellowship because if they're not going to sponsor a visa, there's no point in doing the fellowships. So I look at the visa status and then I go and look at the fellowships on the program website. There isn't, like here they tell you like a specific breakdown, US IMG is 2%, non-US 1%. Again, these numbers are very inaccurate sometimes. Sometimes you find zero and there are actually people that match there. It's weird. Here they tell you like where the graduates are from. And yeah, so this is a nice website that I use. And sometimes because sometimes you're not going to find the link of the residency program on ERAS, so you can just find it here and you press on it and you go from there. And here probably if we go into, it's usually like the in terms of like the application criteria and what they need, it's usually in the admissions or like application criteria or how to come here. It's different in different websites, but usually for the good places, it's easy to navigate. So it's here how to apply. Here it tells you we are unable to sponsor H1 visas. And then probably it's going to mention it somewhere. Residents. Okay, so here it's actually not that straightforward because I don't see it mentioned specifically for IMGs. It just says we do not use strict step 1 and step 2 cutoff scores. No fees, letters of recommendation, blah, 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 Department of Medicine, leadership. We talked about this, I think, before. Usually because this is a really good program, usually the really good programs, they require the chair letter to be one of them, and then 3 that are different. So, but a lot of times when you open the program website, it is specific. They mentioned like for IMGs, we need 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's when you can see it. If you don't find it, like I said, you have Residency Explorer, you have ERAS, and then you also have Frida. So if I just do Frida, where's the screen going? Just trying to move this down. Okay, so Frida is another website that's by the American Medical Association. You can also look at programs here. The only advantage of Frida over Residency Explorer is the fact that you can filter based on visas. So if I just want the visas, I can do it here. Residency Explorer used to have this in the past, but then they removed it for some reason so that you need to check every website by yourself. I personally went through that just because I felt like Frida is not that accurate sometimes. But if you just want to err on the side of, I just want things quickly and efficiently, you can just put the visa, and you can also filter by the percentage of IMGs that you have. And then it gives you some details about the program. But for me, from what I've seen, Frida information is usually out of date. It's usually like 2 or 3 years old, which is fine, I guess. But usually Residency Explorer is more up to date. And then of course, the most up to date will be the program website and the ERAS stuff if they wrote anything there. But again, this is another resource that you can use. So now we went through all the resources. Let me go back to ERAS. Just for a final overview of exactly what needs to be done when you're filtering through program websites. Okay, so like we said, we're gonna do let's say whatever, like let's say I looked at this program website. I'm going to open the program website. Okay. I'm going to go through everything in the program. And let's say I went through all the filters that we did, and mainly the filters are going to be, I press the program website. I want to see if they sponsor visas. That's number one. I want to see if I fit all their application criteria. They don't require like 12 months of electives that I don't have, or they don't need insane scores, and they have good fellowships. So I decided that I want this program. What I used to do is basically I just save the program. So I don't know if you see it in the screen or not. Here it says save if you press the program. So if I press save and then I go up in ERAS here, and then I press save all selected. So, oh, I didn't pick the program. So let's say, for example, here it's internal medicine, and then I'm going to press save all selected. So it's going to save that program for me in my saved programs. And this is basically like the list that we were talking about, the Excel sheet that we were doing. ERAS can do it for you automatically through the ERAS website. So that's why I think it's a waste of time to do the Excel sheet. I'm going to save the program. And then if I just go on my programs, and if I go to saved programs, I'm going to find the program down here. I'm going to find it with all the other programs. After I'm done with saving all the programs, I can filter through them with the city, with the state, with the program name, whether it's alphabetical or something that I want to do. And from here, I can directly just mark them all and then press apply and finish my application. So for me, this is the most efficient way of getting it done. You just open ERAS, I look at the websites. First of all, I'm going to open the programs one by one, in my humble opinion, which I think should be done. I open the thing on ERAS. I read quickly if there's something. If there isn't, I press the program website. First thing I'm going to check is if they sponsor visas. If I don't find that, I'm going to go on Residency Explorer, check if they sponsor visas. If they do, I'm going to look at the fellowship match rate, how many fellows go where. If they go to competitive fellowships, even if it's in the middle of nowhere, to me, that's much better than going into insane places, even Harvard. A lot of people, by the way, they tell you that IMG is matched at Harvard and so on. But yes, but you know, it's nephrology, it's rheumatology. So it's great and it's very nice and so on. But then I want to see that program match people into something that is more competitive, just so I can know that fellowship program directors hold this residency program in high regards and really believe in the quality of training that they give to their residents. Let me. Okay, so yeah. So, like I said, you do these things, you look at the fellowships and you save your programs, and then you end up just going for that. And you want to be on the side that is more liberal when you're applying, if money is not going to be an issue. And then you really sit and decide after you receive your interviews, because the yield of interviews that usually people get, like the majority of IMGs, at least for IM, that have decent applications, usually they would receive, if they apply to 200 to 300 that are IMG friendly, they would receive around 6, 7, 8. This is usually where the number is. Of course, if they're holding a green card, that number doubles, sometimes even triples. And like we said, the 6 or 7 or 8, if it's good places, this almost guarantees that you're going to match based on the graphs that we showed and so on. So this is just something for you to consider. You have the Google Drive link, so you can look at all these different statistics and numbers on your own. But the final point that I wanted to make, and this is very, very, very important. Sometimes we get lost in the middle of all of these numbers and we forget. In the end, statistics do not matter. Every one of us is someone who's an individual, who has a different separate application, who has a different set of circumstances that they're doing, who's applying to programs. And like I said, it's a very random process. So in the end, you can never with certainty say, I'm going to match, or I'm not going to match, or I'm going to match somewhere good, or I'm not going to match somewhere good. No one knows. In the end, these numbers, they just help to guide us. But in the end, there are so many miracles that can happen. Sometimes people, and I know people that received 8 or 9 interviews that never matched. And I know someone that received 1 interview, just 1, and they matched. So it's just very different. Don't be discouraged if you compare to your colleagues and you feel like this person has so much more clinical experience in the US. They have a lot of letters, they have higher scores, they have research, they have whatever. In the end, every person is doing their own journey. Stop comparing to anyone. Just work hard on yourself. Try to make your application, your own application, as strong as it can be without comparing to anyone else, and then apply. And then you're going to see the extreme randomness of this process will make it seem like even if your application is so
similar to someone else, if you both apply to the same exact set of programs, they're going to get a completely different set of interviews than you're going to get. So the comparisons in this aspect, really, they don't help anyone. And the statistics and the numbers, yes, for me, sometimes it's like a stress relief that I need to look at the numbers and compare myself and do all these things. But in the grand scheme of things, we're all different. And in the end, things just happen. Sometimes it's just things that are extremely, extremely unexpected. Like I said, the program that I applied to, they don't take IMGs. Their percentage of IMGs is 0. They don't sponsor visas, and the interview didn't go well, and all these things. And then it just happens. So sometimes, طبعا, this is tawakkul ala Allah, بالآخر what God wants, because this is kind of the biggest step in terms of how much you've been preparing. So I'm doing all these exams and this research and this travel, and I'm spending all my parents' money, and I'm doing all these things, and it all comes down to this one thing that we need. And this is kind of going to determine not the trajectory of your life, but just it's going to determine at least the next 3 to 7 years of your life and where you're going to go and what you're going to do. So it's much bigger than me or you or anyone else. It's God, bidabbar everything for us. And if you have that kind of, calamity when I'm just like, I did everything that I have to, atawakkal ala Allah, and then whatever God writes is the best for me, just because I cannot decide these things for myself. They're very big decisions. It's just going to flow and things are going to be good, inshallah. So this is it's a very important point, because I see so many people lost in these numbers, and it's really not a good thing. So yeah, I don't know. Okay. So I think we have some time for questions. Again, thank you very much for Alfaisal MedHub for allowing me to be here and for allowing me to give this talk. We have a lot of time for questions. I don't know if you guys want me to just like go through the chat and answer all these questions, or if we take questions. I think I'll just go through the chat so that we answer them one by one. Of course, whoever wants to leave, feel free. I think we're done with the majority of the important stuff. Someone is asking me if I may ask, was there a specific reason to avoid New York? I don't know if you've been to New York or not, but for me, I've been there, and in my humble opinion, a lot of people like it and love it and think it's the best place on earth and so on. For me, I really did not like the place, and it's known to be a very malignant city in terms of the residency programs. That's why it has the most IMG heavy programs. The nurses over there, they have unions, so the nurses are very well protected. So the residents end up doing a lot of the scut work. They do blood draws, they transfer patients through radiology stuff, and they really the residents are really overworked, really tired. And you've seen like this example of the Lincoln Memorial Hospital, where 3 people from the same program committed suicide over the course of a year. It's known to be extremely malignant. And even if you ask our graduates that matched into New York, just ask them about the work-life balance and the stuff there, and they would tell you that it's not great. Now, this is specifically for things, for example, like IM. Things like surgery, for example, because some people match surgery in New York. Yes, all these things apply, but at the same time, you get so much autonomy that after the 5 or 6 years that you're going to do, you really can deal with anything you're presented with. So for some people, that's the priority. That's what they want. They want insane training instead of going to a really big name hospital where I'm getting so much supervision and I'm not really able to work with my own hands or like be able to do decisions. So it just depends on your priorities. But that was my personal reason for avoiding New York, because I just wanted to be in a comfortable place where I have time to work on my education, but as well, I'm very interested in research. I want to do research. I want to do education. I want to do teaching. I want to do all the different things. And if I'm in a place that makes me work 15 or 16 hours every day and 24-hour calls where I get every 3rd day on call and stuff, I'm not going to be able to do all of these in 3 years, and I don't need to. So that's why I avoided applying to New York.
Hello, Dr. Eiad. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah.
What about New York? I hear that New York has good, even though the residency programs are malignant, but I hear they have good fellowship opportunities. What's your take on that?
So like I said, this goes back to in terms of the training that we received. Everyone knows that New York is malignant, but at the same time, everyone knows that the residents in New York get so much autonomy because there is literally no supervision. You're going to make so much mistakes that by the end of your residency, you're an extremely competent clinician. And for surgery specifically, that's why they know that anyone that graduates from New York, they match into the most insane fellowships all across the country. And I would hold this would be true to a certain extent for IM fellowships, but not as much as surgery, because IM fellowships, usually you need to be in a good place in New York to match in a good fellowship across the country. And this goes back, like I said, just because the program directors know that someone that came out of New York after 5 years of training, this person is a competent clinician. Do I want to go through this? Personally, I don't, but other people, they might have a different idea. I'll just answer quickly the questions through the chat. Do prestigious programs tend to have such requirements as 12 months of electives? I've seen the 12-month requirement probably in around 10 to 15 programs out of the 350 programs that I looked at for IM. So it's not a very common thing, but you do see it. I could show you guys an example. So like we talked about, so BID MC, which is Beth Israel, which is one of the Harvard affiliated places. There's like a place, which is University of South Carolina, which is not even that good of a place, which is weird, but they have it. So you're going to find it in just a few places. And that's why if you want to save your money, that's why going through the programs and looking at the application requirements will easily make you just cancel out these programs. Does it matter if experience is observership or electives? 100 million, billion, trillion%. So many places are going to tell you explicitly, when I need the 3 months, they tell you hands-on experience, and hands-on means it's an elective. Now, if I'm comparing, if I have an elective and an observership, I would definitely not even look at the observership, even if the elective is like a clinic or it's in a very bad place and the observership is in a very big university place, because I need hands-on experience. That being said, though, if I don't have electives and I don't have any US experience and I only have an observership, go for it. So this is how you want to do it. But definitely any kind of elective in the middle of nowhere is much better than an observership. And a lot of the places that require US clinical experience, if you go on the website, they mention explicitly hands-on. So even if you're going to go and do an observership, try to let the letter, because there's no, like here, they don't work with like certificates or things as proof of what you did. Basically, whatever you're going to write on ERAS, you can write whatever the hell you want. You can write that I won an Olympic gold medal, and no one's going to ask you for it, for like proof. But you're going to be asked about these things in interviews. And if they felt for a second that you put information that is not accurate, you're automatically canceled. So if you did an observership, you can kind of put it as a hands-on rotation. If I have a letter of recommendation from that doctor that I worked with saying somehow that it was hands-on, I can kind of slide it into an elective, and no one is really going to pay attention. How do you take electives, and in what specialty should it be or better? Can we talk about the electives maybe a bit later? Maybe my email is there. You can email me and we can talk about them later, just because I want to talk about like the specifics of the ERAS application, and then we can do talks on electives. I'm sorry, just because it's going towards that side. Clinical experience and attachments, also same thing. So let's go back to that later. How much does year of graduation play a role? The year of graduation plays a role. I would say the most strict cutoff that I've seen was 3 years. So they tell you if you're within 3 years, that's when we take them. If you're more than 3 years out, usually they just filter you out. So if you're someone that graduated this year or the year before or the year even before that, you're most likely going to be just about the same as everyone else, as long as you graduated and you were doing something. If there's a gap in your CV, that they don't like that. So you graduated in 2020 and you're applying in 2022, what were you doing all that time? I need to say that I was working either on research or like I'm working as a TA or I'm doing something. That's fine. And they don't really look at that negatively, because they know that IMGs, they have to do a lot of stuff and they need to do a lot of exams, and sometimes not everyone is done on graduation. So that's fine. Usually the vast majority of programs, they put the cutoff as 5 years, but a few of the really good places, they put it as 3 years. Do these programs look into MSPE for US clinical electives, even if I don't mention them on ERAS? The MSPE is a very low priority thing for IMGs. It's the main utility of MSPEs is for American students, just because they know all the medical schools, because they're limited schools, and they know the quality of training that they receive in each of them. So they sit and they read the MSPE and they can tell the tier of student that they're dealing with based on the MSPE. For IMGs, because there is so much variety in the quality of training that IMGs receive. So your MSP can be saying that you're the best person that they've ever received in the whole country. You're the best physician ever. And it wouldn't really play that big of a role compared to someone who's from a really good place that they know, they've been getting so many residents from there that said that they're an average applicant, because they know that the quality of training there, they know about it and they can tell that this is good. So don't really pay a lot of attention to the MSPE because it doesn't matter as much for us IMGs. Is it possible a program website or other sources say they don't sponsor visas, but when we reach out to them directly, they are open to it? 99.99999% no. I would say 100% no, because I've never heard of a story of this happening. If you want to sit and call each program, it's up to you, but usually the programs update the websites because the vast majority of applications they're going to receive are actually from IMGs. So they're actually very keen on updating this every year because they know if I explicitly say I'm not going to sponsor visas, the number of applications I'm going to receive this year is going to drop from 6,000 to 2,000. So usually they're on top of it. And if they don't, if they're not updating their website, this raises red flags for me about the website. If you're not updating about the program, I'm sorry. If you're not updating your website every year for the applicants, then what are you really doing? Because this should be like the biggest thing that you want to focus on, because this is what attracts applicants to you. If you have very outstanding research background, can it compensate for your months of observership? No. Clinical experience is more preferred than research, that's for sure. Research is gonna make the tier of interviews that you receive a lot better, but it does not substitute clinical experience. Anyone got Google Drive link? I sent it. New York, I replied. Google Drive done. The recording, please talk to Alfaisal MedHub. I think they're gonna circulate the recording with everyone after it's done. I don't really have information about that. What about sponsorship? I assume this is Saudi sponsorship. This is different, like they call them SACM and stuff. We can talk about this later just because like the vast majority of questions are not related to this. So if we have some time later, I'll talk about it. I can share the slides for sure. I'll send them to Alfaisal MedHub and maybe they can send them to you. Visa, you mean H1 should the program have, or J1 works too? Both of them. This, like, we can work on both, but H1B needs you to have step 3, I'm sorry, before, usually the vast majority of programs, they require it before February, but the really good programs, they want your score to be back before the end of December. So if you feel like you have plans to do that, and of course, step 3 is only done in the US. If you feel like I have plans to come and do step 3 here, then you should apply to the programs that sponsor H1B. But there is no program that only sponsors H1B and doesn't sponsor J1. So you can just apply to them. And then if you're not able to do step 3 in time, you just go with the same program, but use the J1 visa. And yeah, so for people that don't know, the H1B is basically the visa that counts towards your immigration status, and you can kind of apply for a green card later on. J1 is a student exchange visa, so usually you have to work, and then the only way you have to go back to your home country, otherwise you do a waiver for 3 years, and then you can apply for immigration and green card. If the website says that they do not sponsor H1, so like I said, if it doesn't sponsor H1, that means it sponsors J1, so that's fine. Which website of the two do you prefer? Residency Explorer for sure, because Frida's more outdated. Could you please share with us how you worked on your CV to make it competitive? Sure. Okay. I'm just trying to keep in mind the very important questions, but I'll talk about this very quickly. To make yourself competitive, you need good scores, of course, step 1, step 2. And when I say good scores, I'm not talking about 270s. I don't have these kinds of scores. I don't need insane scores to match somewhere good. But you need good scores above their filters. And the highest cutoff that I saw, aside from the insane things, the 90th percentile and stuff, the highest cutoff that I saw was 250. And this was in very few places that required 250 on step 1 and step 2. The vast majority are 230s, and there are some that require 240. So if you're above 240, you wouldn't have to worry about like score cutoffs. So you don't need insane scores. After 240, it doesn't become about how highly you score, it becomes about the different aspects of your application. So whether they have a lot of electives, or they have very strong letters of recommendation, they have good research, they have good volunteering and all these things. So like I said, above 240, it stops becoming about, you know, they never rank people based on how highly they scored. So this is basically what I did. I just worked on research from 3rd year. I have some publications. I have some other research experience. I did some spirit stuff, and then I did electives in my final year, and I did step 3 before before the rank order list deadline. I did step 3 in December.
Doctor, I have a question.
Yeah,
I have a question. Does having step 3 prior to submitting an application, like, do you think it would make a difference in how many interviews you end up getting?
yes. Having step 3 before your application, if your scores are not great in step 1 and step 2, having step 3 will vastly increase the number of interviews that you get. If your scores are already very good and your application is strong, having Step 3 when you apply is gonna give you some interviews, but not a lot higher. Because if your application is really competitive enough, you're gonna be interviewing at really good places, and most of the really good places don't care about Step 3 that much. It's usually the smaller places, the community places, the New York places, all these things, they care about Step 3 a lot, because to them, if they get an applicant who passed all 3 exams, they know that this applicant is going to continue the residency and so on. Because if you fail Step 3 in the first year of residency, if you fail it, like, I think it depends on the state, but sometimes if you fail it 3 or 6 times, you have to drop out. So for them, that's like a hassle and stuff. So they just guarantee that this person is coming and they're going to finish residency. They're going to do the work for us. After I received my Step 3 score in December, I got 2 more interviews. So like I had 7 before and I had 2 after December when I emailed programs my Step 3 score. So it does play a small role, but I wouldn't say too much if your application is strong enough.
Manish, to follow up on that, do you need to manually update programs? You need to individually email programs?
On ERAS, you can update the USMLE transcript. You can always update that. As soon as you have your Step 3 score, you can update it. But the majority of programs, they download the list of applications just once, just on the day that the applications are released. So for you guys, it's going to be September 29th. I wouldn't say 99, I don't know the number, but the majority, from talking to program coordinators and stuff, they download the list once on the 29th and then they just don't update it. So if you want to update something, you manually email the programs and you just hope that they look at your email and they go in the application and they update it. That's why they tell you that applying a week or 2 after the application opens, it severely impacts your chances, just because the vast majority of programs are not going to go back and re-download the applications. So that's why you really need your applications to be done by before the time that ERAS opens.
Hi, Doctor.
I'm sorry?
Hi, Doctor. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I have a question. What questions in the interview, if you heard them, like you would consider the program as a red flag and you will not rank them at all?
Sure. I'll just, actually, I'll talk about this now. It's just that I'm seeing so many messages, so I wanted to finish them first, but in terms of questions, so I did not interview in any of the New York programs, so I don't know, but I heard from my friends some really weird things. So for example, they used to ask females, any plans, are you married? Any plans for getting pregnant? Something like this, automatically, you just like, no, like you are not, this is one of the illegal questions, but it was asked in New York. Some other questions, some programs, they ask about medical questions. So how would you manage hyponatremia? Tell me how you would manage pneumonia. If someone asks me in an interview a medical question, this means that they want to filter based on, is the person competent enough to be a clinician or not? And this is very bad. You only see this in, again, like I said, New York programs. That's why I never experienced this. But you're not supposed to be asked medical questions on your interview. It's supposed to be about you, because the medical knowledge and the experience is going to come during the training. Anyone can be trained. You know, if you get any person and you give them the adequate training, they're going to be good in 3 years. But they just want to know what the person is like and if they're good to work with and so on. This is the majority of interviews. So if someone is asking you they want to make sure that you don't kill a patient or something, this is a very big red flag. I usually never liked the questions about, tell me about your strengths and tell me about your weaknesses. I only received them from a couple of programs and I never ended up ranking them. So I only ranked 7 out of my 9, because 2 of them were kind of university affiliated. They weren't very big programs, and the interviews were weird. Like they were asking me a lot of weird questions about like, so they asked me about your strengths, your weaknesses. And usually when you start interviewing, you're going to see that the majority of good programs, the interviews are very relaxed and they just like, it's a conversation. They ask you about nice things and about the hobbies and so on. They don't put you under the spot. And, like they used to tell me, if I was to go to the selection committee now and tell them 3 things about you right now so that I can take you, what would they be? And so on. So these kinds of questions are weird. Like I'm not used to these kinds of questions. And to me, like I was already like in the middle about the program. So I just decided I'm not going to do it, So that's going to be the red flags. You're going to know them when you start interviewing and seeing how the interviews are. You're going to be able to tell that this is a good interview versus an interview that just wants IMGs and just wants applicants. Other interviews, there were program directors that were showing off the interviewees. So they're like, today we're interviewing 10 people. You know that 9 of you have more than 250 today. So what does a score of more than 250? So this was also another New York program. So what does this tell me about the program? It tells me that they're showing off scores, and that's not really something that is good enough, So yeah, can you put the ERAS link here? I'm sorry?
Never mind, I'm so sorry.
Oh, that's okay. ERAS, just Google ERAS, because the ERAS link is like something through AMC, and you can't like go through ERAS unless you buy a token. So you can only go through these programs in the year that you're applying.
What about ethics questions? Is it a red flag to be asked in the interview?
No, ethics questions are okay. Ethics questions are, it's not like great, but I've seen a few programs that ask them that are not bad programs. Usually the programs that are, this is all for some reason, I don't know about other people, if they, like other people that applied, if they share the same thoughts, but to me, this IMG percentage, that tells me the tier of interviews that I'm going to be receiving in terms of what questions I'm going to be asked. So the interviews that had like 20-30% IMGs, I get asked these ethics questions. 70-80%, you get asked these stupid, weird questions about management and about when you're going to be pregnant and so on. And then the 1 or 2% IMGs, never anything like this. Just how are you doing? Where are you right now? What are your hobbies? Tell me something about your research. Extremely comfortable, you know. But ethics is definitely not a red flag.
Doctor, one more thing. Can you break down the kind of hospitals you said? Community hospitals, university affiliated. Like this ties in back to when you
So for IM specifically, and this also will apply to peds and family medicine, we have university programs, we have university affiliated programs, and then we have community programs. Okay, so these are the three kinds of programs that we have. The university programs, the vast majority of them are really good. And when we say university programs, it means it has its own medical school. So that means that the program and the hospital is big enough, is used to educating people, has a strong name for itself, is going to have all the fellowships that you want, and it's very easy to apply. So sometimes if I just filter the programs that are university, for the most part, you're not going to need to go through like, you know, the IMG percentage and so on and the fellowship matrix, because the majority of them, you can just apply to them because they're good. University affiliated is when it gets a bit tricky, because some universities, so you're going to see things like, for example, University of South Carolina, you're going to find that there are 5 programs that are University of South Carolina. Why is that? Because the main University of South Carolina program, that's the university hospital, that's the one that people go to. But then they also have these small community programs that are affiliated with the medical school. So the rotation, the students do like an ER rotation over there, or like a surgery rotation over there. So they call themselves the University of South Carolina Prime program or something. So this specific thing, the hospital is called Prime Hospital or something, and then they just affiliate themselves. So these is where you need to be comfortable. There are some university affiliated programs that are really good. So they're strong, they're still strong community programs that have a lot of, it's a big residency program and they don't have a lot of IMGs and they take good fellowships. So that's when you need to look at them and see. But the majority of them are going to be really small programs. So for example, things like West Virginia, there's University of West Virginia, which is a really good place that only has like, I think it was 10 or 15% IMG percentage and matches really good fellowships. And then there are 2 affiliated programs, I think Charleston and probably Montgomery or something. So both of these, when you look at them, they only take 6 residents a year. They're 100% IMG. They almost don't match fellowships. And if they do, it's like nephrology and rheumatology. So for me, I would steer away. It's basically a community program, but they just have this university affiliation because sometime in the past, the students went there. So this is when you need to sit and see them. Community programs, some community programs are really strong. So for example, the Cleveland Clinic, until 3 or 4 years ago, it was considered a community program because it didn't have a medical school. Now it's considered a university hospital because it did. So there are some community programs like Leahy Clinic, for example, in Boston. So these places are really good and they're considered community. So the stigma of like community, I'm not going to match there. That's not a mindset that you should have. If you just follow the outline that we use for every single program, you'll be able to tell. And you'll have on your list, so out of my 226, I probably had around, I would say 130 university programs and like 70 or 80 university affiliated and maybe 20 pure community programs that are actually strong enough. So that's fine. As long as they match good fellowships and they have a big program, they're going to be good and you can apply to them. Reddit spreadsheet is the particular link, or just Google. Just go on the Reddit website and go to medical school subreddit. And then they're going to start putting them. So you can probably if you go in like a couple of weeks, they're probably going to be sticky on the threads and you can just search the IM programs. You mentioned your program did not sponsor visa. How was that not a problem? No, my program sponsors visas. They just the Residency Explorer says that it doesn't take IMGs. The IMG percentage was 0, but they do definitely sponsor visas. They just really dislike visas, my program. But I ended up matching there. So, and I know many other people that have this issue. How helpful is doing electives in the same programs that I'm planning to apply to? Extremely helpful. This is like the biggest thing that you can do. So I did an elective at Loyola University. I did an elective at Spectrum Health, and I did an elective at Mayo Clinic, Arizona. And I got an interview at Spectrum, at Loyola, and at Mayo Clinic. So definitely when they see someone from there that did a rotation with them for a month and maybe even got like some letters that they used, this is very strong for them. And always try your best when you're going to hospitals to sit with the program director and talk to them, express your interest in the program and tell them that, you know, I'm very interested in coming here and so on. So I did this, I wasn't able to do this at Loyola because it was like peak COVID and they sent us home. So I was never able to meet the program director, but they still sent me an interview. I did this at Spectrum. I met with the program director and we talked about my interests and stuff. And I did this here at Mayo when I came as a student. I sat with the program director and I expressed my interest in all these things. So I really think that this plays a role, not because of anything, just because they receive, and this is what the program director even at Spectrum Health told me, they receive around 6,000 applications. 4,000 or 5,000 from them, even more are from IMGs. They're not, and if they filter based on scores, based on 250s and research and everything, they're still going to have 2,000. They're never going to send 2,000 people interviews. So they want these things that help them make a decision. So if they see that the person did an elective there and like they didn't kill anyone or do something stupid, they're obviously going to send them an interview. If they see that the person is, the address they put is around that area, they live in Michigan or they have family in Michigan, for example, with Spectrum, they're going to send them an interview, you know? So they're just trying to make their job easier. It's not about picking the best people. They just want people that are actually wanting to come to the program. And you doing an elective there shows a really good sign that you're interested in the program. Where would you recommend the better cities? There are no better cities. Apply everywhere across the US. Just avoid certain places. At least for me, the safety is very important. So places like Baltimore, places like Detroit and Michigan, just these things are things that can actually Google and like rank the top 10 worst cities and so on. And you're going to find that these places, usually the programs in them, they're IMG heavy. So I wouldn't apply there. By the way, I did not mention this. So I didn't apply to New York programs, even though they're like 75 or 80. I applied to only 3 of the New York programs. I applied to Cornell and I applied to, what are the good places? Columbia, and I applied to NYU. These are places that the IMG percentage is like 1%, and they're insanely prestigious hospitals. So I'm like, the only reason that would make me go and suffer and live there for 3 years would be if it's a really good place. Otherwise, I wouldn't go. So I did apply to 3 or 4 New York programs. Would having only 1 month of US clinical elective be detrimental to your application given average scores? I don't think so. I think if you have 1 month, it's still better than the 2,000 or 3,000 that don't have any months, you know, so you're better than those. You will be filtered out maybe by people that require 6 months or maybe even 3 months, but you're still better than others. Definitely, if you have the chance to do more, I would recommend doing more. But if this is all you could do back then, I would still recommend applying and not waiting a year for it because you're still better than a lot of people. What benefits do you as citizen IMGs have? Visa sponsorship. So instead of looking through the 350 programs, they can look through the 550 programs because there are so many good programs that just don't want to take IMGs. And not because of anything, just because they know that if I'm going to accept someone on a visa, the paperwork is a lot. I'm going to have to suffer for a bit of time and they're going to be late. I was late to start here, by the way. And this is what my program director told me before we started. Like, she's like, I'm not really interested in IMGs and people on a visa because last year, the IMG, it wasn't an IMG. Last year, they accepted a med student here who was studying at Mayo, but she was Chinese. So she did her med school here, but she was on a visa. So she had to go back to China and she stayed there for 2 months. She joined here in September. So that's why, and this happens commonly, like IMG heavy programs, they know that if I'm going to accept 15 people this year, only 10 are going to start on time and the other 5 are going to come throughout July or in August. So some places, they just like, they just don't want to go through this hassle. So that's why they just look at US IMGs in the sense that, you know, US IMG, I can just take the flight and come here directly with the US people. So I don't really need to do any visa paperwork. So this makes you a much more favorable applicant for programs, and the required scores that you need, they also like, they would happily take someone with a 220 who's a US IMG over a 250 or 260 who's a non-US IMG. This is the reality of things. So the strongest factor that you can have in your application is actually a green card or a passport. And if you can have that, like if someone here is listening from second or third year and you're working on that, definitely work on that. This is much more important than getting higher scores. This doesn't mean anything, by the way, because the majority of people of our university that applied and that matched in really good places, the majority of us don't have green card and needed visa sponsorship. So you can definitely still match somewhere like that. But it just makes it easier if you have a green card and you don't need sponsorship. Do you think US clinical electives with a doctor at his private practice have any value? Especially it's hands-on, is a surgical first assistant? Yes, definitely. I had, because we were COVID, so I had these 3 months in hospitals and I had 3 other months in clinics. And that was totally fine. As long as you can write it off as a hands-on clinical experience, this counts as an elective, just like a hospital one. Of course, if I can go and do it in a prestigious hospital and get good letters that are university letterheaded, that's better. But having these, they count as electives and you're already going to be much better than so many of the other IMGs that weren't able to come. Dr. Ismail just said the talk on electives will be done soon. Ismail, I wish you mentioned this before I talked about all these things. Anyway, okay, so clinical experience. So let Ismail do these things later. Do they calculate your year of graduation from the day you apply for the match or the day you start residency? Your year of graduation is the day you receive your diploma. Okay, so I was the 7th batch. I graduated in 2019, but then I received my diploma June 2020. So that's when I graduated. My year of graduation is 2020, and I applied to the 2021 match, and I matched, and I started working July 2021. So if you do everything without delays, there's always going to be a year delay. That's when people do TA or research or anything else. Does anyone stand a chance with year of graduation more than 5 years, but no gap? Please share some views on how to bypass this hurdle. I don't have a lot of experience with this, unfortunately. Definitely, I know people that applied and matched. I even know someone that was working with my mom back in Saudi Arabia, and they were like 35. Their year of graduation was like 10. They graduated 10 years ago, and they were working like as an assistant. And they applied and they matched. Here I am. Although they did match in New York, but that's one, like when you have some hurdles, you feel like your application has some weaknesses, that's when you're not at the luxury of picking where I want to go. You just apply all out and see what kinds of programs that you receive. So it's definitely happened before. It's much harder, but it's definitely happened. And you shouldn't like give up if your year of graduation is very far. We talked about step 3. Since we need to make the program list based on how strong we feel our application is, what do you feel constitutes a strong application? I think we talked about this. Research, scores, electives, letters. If I have all these things, your application is already very strong. Of course, the other thing would be if you have a green card and if you graduated from a really prestigious, well-known university. Unfortunately, Alfaisal is still not there yet. It would be there in the programs that people already matched in, but then the vast majority of the US, no one has heard of us before. Email is on this slide if anyone needs it. We'll be conducting a talk on CVs. Yes, so Dr. Marwan Dabbagh, who matched at the Cleveland Clinic, is going to be talking about the CVs. So definitely he can give you a better idea about like CVs and ERAS and so on. If your step 1 score is 239, does that mean you can't apply to 240? Of course you can apply to 240. That's what I said. Even if your step 1 is 230 and the cutoff is 240, I would apply and you might get some interviews from there. The cutoffs are not very strict, I would say, especially when it becomes like a higher number. So if your score is 239, most likely you're not going to be filtered out by the majority of programs. I've also seen a couple of 250 score cutoffs in New York programs for some reason, and these programs are IMG heavy. Just because, like I said, if it's 6,000 and they put 250s cutoff, and this is also like some programs in Chicago, like President St. Francis and like Amita Health and all these things, they do require 250s just because they can make the list of IMGs much shorter, because they know Americans are not going to apply there anyway. Does step 3 score matter? We heard this question a lot. There is no right answer. However, I would say that for the vast majority of programs and things, the score does not matter. You just need to pass. We've heard that for competitive fellowships, your score matters and so on, but I've talked to some doctors that were applying to fellowships, and they told me, like even competitive fellowships like cardiology and GI, and they told me that it does not matter. Unfortunately, the number 1 score they care about for fellowship is actually your step 1 score. So that's gonna haunt you forever. Step 3 is just like something that is there. Of course, if I scored 260s and then I ended up scoring 210 on my step 3, it's a bit weird. It's not like going to significantly ruin your chances, but it raises some flags. But otherwise, if I'm scoring, because the percentiles are shifted, of course, I'm not sure if you guys know this or not. So like a 260, this is in my post. I think a 260 on step 2 is equivalent to like a 245 or 246 on step 3. So as long as like you're within the same percentiles or even like a bit lower in step 3, that's totally fine. And the scores for the most part, they don't matter. What happens if I just have step 1? Some people have applied with just step 1. And actually, I know someone that applied this year, even though they were US citizens. So they did have the passport. They applied only with step 1. They did step 2 after the application. And then they got their score at the end of November. And then they emailed all the programs and they actually matched and they're working this year. So that's fine, but you need to have other things, you know? I don't think if you're a non-US IMG who needs a visa and your application isn't that strong and your step 1 score is like average or something, I doubt that you applying that year was going to help you. I feel like I would just wait a year, really focus on my step 2, score high, do electives, do research, and then apply the second year with a full application. We talked about the universities. If you were a kitchen appliance, which one would you be? Did you get such questions? I've heard of weird questions happening. Haven't heard of that one. I've heard of other things about like turning the light on and some weird things, but I mean, you can never prepare for these kinds of questions, honestly. I feel like these questions, just whatever comes to your mind, and there is no right answer. They just want to see how you're thinking. It's not like, you know, they have a list of 5 things and they're waiting for you to say one of them to take you. So just say whatever, and I think it's going to be fine. What could people with a low step 1 score do to make their applications luring? Research, 100%. Electives, very strong letters and connections. If I know any doctor in the US, if I know family, friends or anything, and by doctor, I don't mean residents as much, just because residents, usually they can help sometimes if they're like a 3rd year or something, but interns and 2nd years, they're not really going to have that much impact, especially if your application has red flags. So if you have like any attending that works somewhere, even if it's in the middle of nowhere, you can ask them, can you reach out to the program director and tell them about my application and so on. So connections, letters, research, and really focusing on your step 2 to make a big jump. How much do electives cost? So we said we're going to talk about electives later. We talked about the scores and cutoff. Should I use 2 US addresses if I don't live in the US currently? The one that matters is your mailing address. The permanent address, it's fine. You can leave it to Saudi, it's fine. But the mailing address is like where you currently are at. Some people say that if I put a US address, you're more likely to get interviews from programs around that area. This is definitely true for US applicants, 100%. They filter them based on geographic location, sometimes 100-mile radius, sometimes 200-mile radius. For IMGs, it's less important. However, it did happen. So I know some of my friends that received more interviews, even though we had extremely similar applications, but they received more interviews in a specific region because they put their address in that region and I put my address in somewhere else. So I received in other places. So you can't put a US address, even if you're not permanently living there, that's fine. Can you please share your credentials? So I mean, my scores are above 250, step 1, step 2, and step 3 above 240s. I have 7 research publications. I have 6 US clinical electives. I did research at Cleveland Clinic in my 1st year, at Harvard in my 3rd year. And I talked about my electives and so on. And I have some other projects that we're running, and I wrote a chapter of a book. So yeah, so just the regular stuff, just focus on, like we talked about, scores, research, electives, letters, and that's about it. There isn't really much more that you can do. Like other people do like different degrees and they sit and do other kinds of stuff. They go and come do a specific research here in the US. I never had any of that done. What makes a valuable letter of recommendation? Something that is personal, something that talks about you more than generic. So usually they like to include a personal story, something from your CV, like he has the publication in blah, he talked to us about blah, he gave a presentation about blah, all of these things. When you make it more personalized, that's when it's much better than being generic. What's the best way to fill gap years? It depends. If your application is really strong, and I felt, for example, that my application is strong, I could have done research here during this year while I waited, and I had like opportunities to do research. But I felt that it's just an extra year. It's going to be hard work of research, when in reality, I can just take a break and work as a TA and like, you know, just be comfortable. So I decided to do TA. Some other people, their applications are really weak, so they have to do some research outside. They have to come here just so they can see if they can form a connection with any of the doctors that can help them. So if your application is strong, I would say you can do whatever you want as long as it's not a gap year. If it's weak, I would recommend coming here, doing either like an observership, working as a medical assistant, doing research, anything else. How important is research when other parts of application are competitive? Yeah, this is a very good question. This is a very good question. I had some of my friends, we had extremely similar applications. We had extremely similar scores, electives even, but then research, I had a lot of research compared to them. And it matters in the tier of interviews that you receive. I actually noticed this, and no one ever told me this before, but research actually makes the academic programs look more at your application, way more than the scores do. So for me, like the majority of my interviews were from academic places, university hospitals. And like I said, just because like some of my other friends, we had similar applications and they did not, the only thing different between me and them is research. And I feel like that played a role because I was even asked about this a lot during my interviews. Tell us about this research. Tell us about what are your research aims and goals and what do you do and what's the best research project you worked on and so on. The bigger the program, the more prestigious the program, the more research-oriented the program is, and the more they focus on research. And this is something that I only realized after I applied. So yes, you can be competitive, but research is going to make you stand out more with academic places. That doesn't mean that if you don't have research, it won't, but usually it makes it much easier to get a higher tier of interviews if I have research. And by research, I don't mean like, 15 publications and so on. If I have 2 or 3 research experiences, like one good publication or something, and with some research, just showing them that I know what research is and I'm into research, this is definitely going to go a long way in your application. I'm sure of it. Would step 2 score be the cutoff after step 1? 100%. That's definitely doing that. So that's why if you can do step 1 before that, it will be much better. You need step 1 for good electives. You need a step 1 score, like to do step 1, but they don't rank people based on like how highly they scored to get electives. And that's only in a few places. A lot of electives, they don't need step 1. And I had like an elective presentation on this, probably somewhere on the website, and they're going to talk about electives again, so you guys can see that. What happens if step 2 scores less than step 1? Depends how highly we're talking about. If you scored the 250 in step 1 and 230 in step 2, it's going to raise some flags and you might be filtered down. If you score 250 and then 242 in step 2, depending on the programs, New York programs, and I heard this happening actually. I know someone that, they had a good step 1 score and they had a good step 2 score, and the step 2 score was actually even higher than the step 1, but the percentile was lower than the step 1 score. And they interviewed at a New York program, and the program director told them, what happened there? Why did you drop percentiles? So this does happen. The bigger the place, the less likely they're going to focus on this. But it does happen. And like I said, if we're talking like a few points difference here and there, that's fine. If it's a significant drop, it might raise some red flags. I'll just take a sip of water just because I've been talking nonstop for a couple of hours, just a minute. All right. Do you have any tips for indicating preferences on supplemental application? If we're open to all locations, is it still better to choose geographical preferences or indicate no geographical? I would say, especially if you're going to signal to strong programs, I would say geographical preference makes a big difference. Most of these university places, they always ask about this, like, do you have any family here? Do you have or where are you staying? All these things. So if your application is strong and you feel like the supplemental application might make it more likely that they look at your application, I would definitely include geographical ties in my application, because honestly, there's nothing more important than ties for them, at least, especially if you're a strong applicant, because they know that you're going to be interviewed at so many good places. So what is going to make you come to them? There's nothing better than geographical ties. Since step 1 is becoming pass-fail. So they already talked about this, the USMLE, they said that there is no backlog. So if whoever had a score, the score is staying permanently, even after it becomes pass-fail. From your experience, when do programs start sending interview invitations? So this is a good question, and it really makes a big difference based on your application. If your application is strong and you apply to like the programs that are IMG heavy, you might start getting interviews like a week or 10 days later after the application deadline. And these are usually going to be the IMG heavy places and so on, just because their only filter is basically scores. They're going to filter you based on scores, blah, 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 blah. He looks good. He has good scores. Send an interview directly. So you will start getting like some surge of interviews at the beginning. I never actually had that. My first interview was like, I guess a month after the application. And like I said, this is because I noticed this, university programs, the really good academic places, they take their time. Sometimes they send the interviews a bit early on, but they send them to American students first, because IMGs are less than the American students in terms of ranking and stuff. So they send out to the Americans first in the first 2-3 weeks, and then they also start reaching out to the IMGs. But I was still receiving interviews all the way until the end of December. I think I would say the peak of when I received interviews, our application that it opened October 21st last year, the peak was end of November for me. So like a month after the application, that's when I started. But my friends, they started receiving as early as like a week after, but like I said, not really great places. Yeah. What are your views about letters of interest? So I sent letters of interest to really strong programs. And I did receive interviews after these things. But the thing is, I'm just not sure if it's the letter of interest that did it or it's my application, because my friends also sent the letters of interest and they did not receive them. So that's why I'm not really sure. Like I remember sending out the letter of interest to a really strong program, and I got like an interview about like a week later. And I told all my friends, I told them, guys, go send a letter of interest to this program. It's going to be great. They're going to email you. They didn't send out any interview to anyone else. So was it my letter that sent it, or were they already going to send me an interview anyway? I'm just not sure. I have heard of letters of interest. They definitely work for American students. Like American students, it's a very known thing that, you know, if I send out 10 letters of interest, I'm going to receive 8 interviews out of these 10. But for IMGs, it plays less of a role. But I mean, it doesn't hurt. Like if it's, as long as you're not like spamming them and you're not sending them to like the wrong people, especially because you're going to see some programs on the website, it says, do not email the program director. So if you see that and then you send the email to the program director, honestly, this would even hurt you more than, like, they might just remove your name. But if there's nothing mentioned and you want to put it, I mean, whatever, it's fine. I don't know how much shield it gives you. How much would the pass-fail score affect IMGs? Definitely strongly affecting IMGs. Would you still recommend doing it before it changes? Depends on where you are. If you're 6 months down in your preparation and you were aiming, for example, for a 240 and your MBMEs right now are in the 230s or in even the 220s and you're scared, I would definitely recommend pushing yourself really hard and doing it before it turns pass-fail. But if you're someone who's just going to start step 1 now, there is no point, because if you do it now and you do it in 3 months, you're going to score a 210 or a 220. It's not worth it. That score is staying with you forever. So, but definitely it would, at least for the beginning, it will affect us negatively, for sure. It's going to become more about the prestige of the university you graduated from, about the step 2 score, about the letters and the electives. So definitely, if you can get a good score before it goes pass fail, definitely do that. Okay, so Dr. Ismail sent the link to register for the other talks. When you talk about research, does it need to be PubMed indexed? No, not for the most part. Like I think out of my 7, I have like 2 maybe that are not PubMed indexed, and that's fine. I was never asked about that. Because there is, when you're filling your ERAS application, there is a place when you put the publications, there's a place for the PubMed ID, but this field is not required. So if you have it, it's nice. If you don't, it's fine. I don't think that makes an issue. I would much rather have 4 PubMed non-indexed publications than 1 PubMed indexed, honestly. So maybe this will matter later on for fellowship, like the papers that we publish during residency, that they want to be in good places and stuff. But as a student, just as long as they're publications, that's fine. The tier of the journals is not really that important. How can we calculate the year of graduation? So I think we already went through this. The day you receive your diploma. When did you start sending letters of interest? I would say maybe 2 to 3 weeks after the application opened. That's when I started. I had a good template, and I just went all out and I sent it. But like I said, I didn't send it to the 226 programs. Honestly, I went to the university programs, the really strong programs. So probably I sent maybe 100 letters of interest. And like I said, because I sent them all before I received my interviews, so I'm not really sure how much it played a role. I think in the grand scheme of things, didn't play that much. Maybe for one program, maybe that first one it did, but for the majority of them, they don't really pay attention, because everyone that applied with me this year sent letters of interest and no one had really good yield. Which type of research was interesting and helpful during interviews? So obviously they prefer like non-case report things than case reports, but if you only have case reports, that's also fine. I think out of my 7, I have 3 maybe or 4 case reports, so that's totally fine. But I do have some other big projects, and they asked me about these, and they even asked me about the case report. Like one interview was like, tell me about this interesting case, and I just went through with it. So like I said, it would definitely matter more for fellowship, but as a student, just get as much research as you can. There is no, the tier of research that you put yourself into doesn't matter as much at the time. Can you apply to different specialties in the same match year? Yes, you can. Just make sure that you don't let them know. Like if I'm applying to IM and I'm applying to surgery, I'm not going to let the IM program director know that I'm also applying to surgery, because that's stupid. He's going to probably not rank you high because he knows that you're more likely to rank surgery higher. And there's this thing that was said, usually it goes on Reddit, that they tell you that it's not strongly recommended to apply to the same hospital in 2 different programs. If I'm going to apply to IM and surgery, you want to try avoiding applying to the same hospital in 2 different programs, just in case there was some kind of program director communication and them like comparing their lists and canceling out the applicants that have to. I've heard of this happening. It was not personally, I've only seen it on Reddit. I'm not sure how common it is, but I would recommend trying to split them. How did you get to research? What are your tips? Honestly, I just worked on research since first year. I did the Spirit thing. We wrote a book chapter then. And then from second year, I was just like going to KFSH, reaching out to doctors and people that publish a lot. I used to reach out to them and email them and tell them I'm interested. And they used to give me projects and we used to work on them. The way I used to find it was from ResearchGate. I just go on ResearchGate. I look at the King Faisal. I look at the specialty that I'm interested in. And I look at people that have high research scores. I used to go to their page and just make sure that they've published 3 or 4 papers in the past 1 or 2 years. That tells me that they're currently active in research. And then I get their email, I email them and I see who replies and I work with them. That's honestly what I did. And then when I came here to do an elective, there was an interesting case that I came across at Spectrum Health. So I just told them that, can I write this case? And I wrote the case and I published that one as well. Are you likely to get interviews while applying for very highly competitive specialties? I don't know. I haven't really applied to highly competitive specialties. I've heard though, and this is actually, I think I've seen this, I've seen this a lot since I applied and since I went on Reddit. People think that IM is not competitive, and it is actually not competitive. It is one of the easier specialties to get into. But getting accepted into academic IM, so getting a really good prestigious place, is equivalent to matching into one of the really competitive specialties. So I would say that if I was able to get some interviews from these academic places, then hopefully if I was applying to one of the more competitive specialties and I have the same kind of application, so strong scores, letters, research, electives, and so on, I would say most likely you will be getting some. A lot of people from Alfaisal, like they matched into, we have someone that matched into ER. We have someone which is extremely competitive. Like right now, they're not even taking American students. We have someone that matched into radiology. So it does happen. Yes, sometimes they have to like spend more time there and get more experience and have to do more things. But I think with a strong application, anything should be possible, hopefully, as long as you don't have like severe red flags. How many research publications? So like I said, I had 7. Does medical education research publication have much weightage? It does have weightage. I wouldn't say it's as strong as clinical research, but I do have, like, I think I have 1 or 2 out of my publications that are medical education, and it's fine, like definitely better than nothing. It's like when we're comparing observership to elective. So definitely elective is better than observership. Definitely clinical is better than merge. But if I only have merge, that's much better than not having research. How important is volunteering in terms of your application? Not that important. Volunteering is more or less something that it's a talking point during the interview. No one is ever going to decide to send you an interview based on how much volunteering you have, or like I volunteered with blah 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 and I did this COVID stuff and I was the best first responder and so on. Because no one is going to go through the 6,000 applications and read the volunteering that they have and decide. So after they filtered you based on scores and based on research and based on electives, and then maybe they're hesitant between 10 applicants, maybe they'd sit and look at what kind of volunteering they have and pick the ones that have volunteering versus the ones that don't. Or maybe after they send you the interview, before they sit with you for the interview, they'll read that volunteering and go like, you know what, I'll ask him about this volunteering. What did they do here and what did they do there? And see their experience, see what they're interested in. So it's a talking point. It's like the personal statement. It's like the things that you did during your medical school and so on. So they're more of talking points than things that they filter you based on. I think we finished all the questions for now. Again, I hope this was helpful. You guys have my email. The other people that have my number, you also have my number, so you can text me on WhatsApp. Best of luck to all of you, especially the ones that are applying this year. It's not an easy process, but hopefully, you know, we all went through it before and we all did fine. So you're going to be the exact same. Hopefully you go through it and you're going to be more than fine, inshallah. Let me know if there's anything else through email or my number. And thank you again to Alfaisal MedHub and everyone else. And yeah, assalamu alaikum.
Thank you so much, Eiad. Thank you. It was very nice having you.
Thank you, big boss. Thank you very much.
My boy, thank you so much. It was nice seeing you after very long. Inshallah, I'll see you soon in person.
Inshallah, Habibi, of course.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Eiad, for this very informative presentation. We always appreciate your time and effort. Thank you to everyone else for joining. Make sure to follow us on Alfaisal_MedHub. We will be covering several topics on the application process, so make sure to stay tuned. And you can always email us at iocom if you have any questions. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Eiad.